Hello, I'm Greg Hunter, and welcome to USAWatchdog.com. Today, a bit of a rising star on the internet. His name is Gregory Mannarino. Now, what Greg hasn't told a lot of people, but we're revealing it and talking about it in detail today, he was a former floor trader for Bear Stearns in the early to mid-90s. He quit that. He went to medical school. He became a physician's assistant, which is about a click below a doctor, but he's begun once again dabbling in the financial system and writing articles and doing videos. He's a rising star on the YouTube channel, and today I have with me Gregory Mannarino. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, you've written also, I left this out of the intro, it was getting a little long, but I wanted to add this to this. It's going to be the first part of our interview, is you've written 6 books so far. This is your 7th book called The Politics of Money. And it's kind of a greatest hits with some new information. Tell me about your new book, The Politics of Money, that just got released.
You know, this book here basically covers what I would call the machinations of what really goes on behind the scenes in government and especially Wall Street. It seems like a very complex world, but it really isn't when you break it down. So that's what I've done with my books, is kind of taken this very convoluted world that people can't understand, and that's done for a reason, and kind of just put it into a perspective so the average guy and the average girl can get a grip on what's really going on. That's pretty much the whole entire concept of the book. And then I go on, obviously, to discuss what people should be doing in this environment where currency is dying to protect themselves as we move forward.
Well, let's talk about what happened last week with John Corzine and MF Global. Basically, the regulators have given this a great big pass. Is this part of what's going on? What does this mean on the signpost? I mean, they basically vaporized, is how they characterized it, $1.6 billion. And now come to find out that, well, they're not going to press any charges with, that because there was chaos and they didn't really intend to defraud people. What do you say about all this?
You know, what do I say about this? I think the whole thing is a scam. I think this whole thing has been a scam going back to the crash of 2008. Let me just say this, and I think people really need to understand this concept. Nothing happens in big business by accident. Nothing. The same thing with government. Nothing happens by accident. It's all, these people who run these things are very smart, and they are very sharp, and they're never living in the moment. They are consistently thinking ahead on what they can possibly do to make the system work for them. And this is exactly what's going on here. It's gotten to the point of utter ridiculousness. And that's really why I've taken the stance that I have. I am frankly fed up to my eyeballs with watching people being fleeced by these institutions. And it's all because of a lack of some basic knowledge. If people have really understood what is going on and how to protect themselves as we move forward, that's what I'm all about. And that's why I do this blog. And that's why I have sincerely dedicated myself to this. This is my passion now.
What are the powers doing in the short term? What do you think the end game is? Are they trying to crash the market? Are they trying to, take control of everybody's money?
Okay.
What's your take?
My take is this. This is the greatest transfer of wealth the world has ever seen. It is theft on a scale that is unimaginable to most people. I mean, just think about recent history. I always go back to the crash of 2008 because that was really the transition here. We understand that the aggregate wealth of the American people has been stolen to the tune of 38% of their net worth. That's staggering, all right? This transfer of wealth is going to accelerate, and I discuss this all the time. What are the central banks of the world doing? Well, they're acquiring gold in mass. We understand that. This is no secret. Meanwhile, they're acquiring gold in mass, and they're still dispersing their fiat unbacked liabilities to the rest of the world. So they don't even believe in their own product. You got it? So it's the biggest conflict of interest in the history of the world. I mean, really think about it. First of all, it's the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of the world. And it's the biggest conflict of interest on the face of the earth. And it all goes back again to 2008. And what really happened in 2008 had nothing to do with subprime people. It was what they set up. The failure of Bear Stearns, a company, as you know, that I worked for in the past, and the failure of Lehman Brothers, these were strategically planned events. And that is a fact.
How can people protect themselves?
Okay. The number one thing is understand what you're getting into. Understand what's really going on in the markets and ignore the mainstream media. That I have to say. And pay attention to people like you. That's the absolute truth. You cannot get the facts anymore, I believe, from the mainstream media because they have a show and they're trying to sell a product.
The former commodities broker and brokerage owner, Ann Barnhart, said, recent court cases have showed that, the courts are saying you can hypothecate and rehypothecate, pledge people's money. And in a bankruptcy, it means that your money is not yours if they go down. Is this part of what you're talking about the fleecing of the country?
It definitely all plays in together, and there's no doubt about it. In this particular instance that you're referring to, we're talking about segregated funds. Segregated funds are it's like a mutual fund that's connected to an insurance policy. And these funds, just segregated, think of that word. They're supposed to be kind of off to the side and kind of not touched. These are, supposedly very low risk investment vehicles where people can kind of count on the money. Obviously, everything has risk. We understand that. But these particular segregated funds are supposed to be almost like gold. Nothing is like gold, obviously. And this court ruling, yes, you're absolutely right. It's saying that if the institution fails, basically you're done and you get nothing. And this goes back to the
especially if they've I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you here. Especially if they have hypothecated your money, pledged your money, borrowed money, and somebody has said, okay, put up some collateral, and they put your money up as collateral. That's supposed to be segregated. Yeah. And what you're agreeing with Ann Barnhart saying that you basically, when your money leaves your hands, you don't have control and it ain't yours. If in the right instances, it's not yours. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Let's go back to the most basic of the basic premises. We understand, well, most people do at least, that these banks, I'm talking about banks in general, operate off of a fractional reserve system. The money that you think, that we think, that the people think is in their accounts is not there. Just because you can punch it up on a computer screen that says, okay, this account has this account has that, and this account has the other thing, that money is not there. It's lent out on a multiplier. And this is why banks' fear runs, because the money isn't there. And this is why these banks need to be recapitalized, because all this money is gone. And I think when people start realizing that, that's when things are really going to start falling apart.
Well, you have told me that money is dying.
Yeah.
That this is what happens when money's dying. Describe what the world looks like when money's dead.
It's not going to be pretty because people are living still in a fantasy land that they believe, because that's the only thing is their belief that currency is real wealth. When this system collapses, and we're marching towards that right now, the ramifications are going to be devastating across the board. As currency or as money dies, people are not going to be able to acquire the resources that they need to live. We've seen this many times in history where money or currency has died. We get hyperinflation, we get massive inflation. People are unable to sustain a lifestyle that they had just a few years ago. In some instances, they can't sustain their lives at all. The biggest ramification of this, and the easiest way I can maybe illuminate this, is to think of it this way. The global debt bubble is the biggest economic and financial bubble in the history of mankind. What do we know about financial and economic bubbles? It's very simple. Every single one has burst in the past. Why do they burst? Very simple, because they rise above a level that can be sustained by any means, no matter what they do, no matter how much bailouts and money that they pump into the system. It just is prolonging the agony. And the bursting of this bubble is going to change not just the financial landscape of the world. It's going to, I hate to have to say it in these terms, it's going to wipe out a large portion of life. There is a direct correlation between this gargantuan, monster, epic debt bubble that we're in right now and the population boom. Let me explain what I mean by that. We've borrowed money. We've pulled money out of the future to live a better life now. That bill is going to become due. Think of it this way. When the debt bubble bursts, you can no longer make payments on the debt. The entire debt becomes payment in full at that moment. As that bubble pops and it starts to come down, people on a global level, because the United States dollar is still the reserve, which we understand is losing its reserve status, is not going to allow people to acquire basic needs to live. And you really got to think about this bubble for what it really is. The debt bubble that we're in, which encompasses the dollar bubble, the derivatives bubble, which is leveraged debt to the tune of about $1.5 quadrillion. It's more money than exists in the entire world, digital or otherwise, by exponents. When this bubble bursts, it's going to literally change not just the financial landscape of the world, but it's going to change humanity. That's the severity of this, and that is why I've decided to do what I am doing, because as you know, I'm a healthcare provider too, so I legitimately care about people. I'm a people person. I love people. I really do, and that's what kind of changed me. So I realize that there is this correlation with the debt bubble and the population boom. We've borrowed money from the future to live a better life now. When that bubble bursts, it all becomes payment due in full at that moment. You cannot just make installment payments on just the interest on the debt anymore. People are not going to be able to acquire basic resources, and people are going to panic at a level that has never been seen before in the history of the world. This is what we're experiencing right now is a transition period. And I've been over this many, many times. I talk about it in my book, and I outline this in my blog that I do every day. This transition period is going to be something that is going to be talked about for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And when we get to the end game, we are going to see a drop in the world population because of all of this. And people are going to suffer on a biblical level because of this.
Wow. So Should people be buying gold, silver, guns, hoarding food, or all the above?
Well, what's the first order of business? The first order of business is survival. I always speak about this. It's very important to prepare. This, I try to put a timeline on this for the actual transition period, when this thing really starts coming to a head. I think people need to have at least enough food for 6 months, access to water, maybe a bug-out plan, a way to protect yourself, if that means arming yourself, because I am certain that we are going to see violent crime erupt on a global level. And believe me, the government knows this. This is why we are no longer one nation under God, as in the Pledge of Allegiance. We are now, here in America, one nation under surveillance. We're being watched. Everything that we do, we got cameras on street corners. We got drones that are going to be patrolling the skies. We have police in every state in the union that are being militarized. Why? Why are they doing this? You always have to ask why. I'm a why guy. And this is why I my job is basically this, but even as a healthcare provider, it all plays in together. People go, hey, Greg, how does this healthcare provider thing tie into the markets and finance? First of all, the human body, as we know, is the most complicated machine in the world. It's a machine. If you can understand how it works, you can understand how anything works. And that's the truth. I like to sit back and look at the big picture, analyze all these things, put them together and kind of say, okay, guys, what is really going on? And then I try to say, okay, what are the most likely outcomes? That's what I do. And as of late, I have friends in business all over the world. And I talk to these guys almost on a daily basis. And these guys are awake and they get it. And I've been talking with these guys and consulting with them about exactly the question you just asked.
And what do they think?
Well, what are they doing? They're doing what the central banks are doing. It's something I've been saying for as long as I've been doing my blog, when I wrote my book, become your own central bank. And how you do that is by acquiring real assets, real money like gold and silver, more specifically silver. I believe, my professional opinion, silver is the most undervalued asset in the history of the world. And I am a major advocate of owning physical silver. You have it in your hand, not paper. Physical.
Your Politics of Money, to sum up your book, Politics of Money. The politics dictating that they want this to happen, then that's basically a major tenet in your book, that basically this is planned and they want to crash the system to have a new system. Am I getting that right?
Well, yes, to a certain degree. I believe you're absolutely right. What we're moving back towards is a two-tier society. The haves and the have-nots. The middle class, people don't realize, is a relatively new concept. The middle class came up during the Industrial Revolution, which is something we need again in this country. We need a new Industrial Revolution to bring us back to where we were. We could talk about that if you like as well. But what they realize, those on the inside, the people, again, I call the political corporatists, they realize the end game is here. And what are they going to do? They're going to try to capitalize on that. Of course they are. They realize the system is not savable in its current form. It is no secret that a new monetary system is already in the works. China is going to be backing their currency with gold. They're acquiring gold faster than any other country is right now. They want the world's reserve currency for many, many reasons. They're sitting back. The Chinese, let me say something about the Chinese people, the Chinese investor. They are the most savvy, I think, that you can ever meet. These people know how to play the game. They really do. I've had many teachers over the years. I would call them teachers, friends of mine that have kind of like taken me under their wing and shown me the way this game really works. A lot of them were Chinese. They understand this game. They want the world's reserve currency. They're sitting back and watching America make all these mistakes, and they're not intervening because you never intervene when your enemy is making a mistake. This is a basic premise of warfare. And that's what this is. This is warfare against the people, against, it's currency wars. We're going to be seeing global war come from this as well. The future, unfortunately, is not looking very good in the short term over the next, 5, 10, 20 years, whatever. But, what is the solution to all this? I can sit here and talk about all this, but is there a solution? Of course there's a solution. Well, what is it? It's very simple. America needs to once again become an industrial power. We don't make anything in this country anymore. We consume, and we live off borrowed money. Americans are in debt up to their eyeballs. And it just plays out that America, the country, is the most indebted of all the developed nations in the world, in the history of the world, as a matter of fact. We need to change that. We need to stop that mentality. We need to make things. And this is, something I get questions all the time from people, young people out there. And I really, my heart goes out to these people because, they're confused and they don't know what to do. And my advice to these people would be this. Study something related to industry, because the United States will have to in the future, to become prosperous again, make things, produce things. Otherwise, we're going to be a third world country. End of story. Period. The end.
Gregory Mannarino. Greg, thanks a lot for helping us. I know you have a really hot YouTube channel. You can just Google Gregory Mannarino. Also, your book, The Politics of Money. Thank you for being on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you.